Yes and no. What's up, guys? I'm Pencil here, and here we are to talk about whether or not the end, or really not the end, the entirety of chapter 268, whether or not it was rushed. Very specifically chapter 268, mainly because I'm going to do a review on it that's longer form, and I don't want to spend like half the review debating with myself whether or not it was rushed. Specifically it. Because we're going to talk about the end of the Sukuna fight as a whole in its own video, because I feel like that's a big enough topic for its own video. I just want to talk about, like, the framing and the pacing, like, everything that has to do with the structure of 268 as a chapter. So then when I do the review, that's going to be long, which I'm going to record right after this, I'm not so focused on that. Because I know, because I tried to record the longer review already, that I spent, like, 30 minutes on this pacing. And I was debating with myself. So let's have some more live debate. But hopefully, as its own video, that probably won't take too long. I hope, I beg. So let's not waste any more time, and let's hop right into it. Heading me. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go. What's up, guys? That guy with a pencil here. Fun fact, I do open to have it on me and keep it on me at all times. Here's another fun fact. Chapter 268 is simultaneously one of the most important chapters in the manga. And I think not just for me, but for, like, the fandom, one of the most controversial. And that's crazy to say, because chapter 267 was also, like, a gaslighter under the fandom. Half the fandom was super duper crazy happy that a certain character made her return and showed up and showed out. And the other half was like, there was basically no build-up for this outside of 2 lines, both of which were very vague, and she's a character that did way too much for just one moment. She was basically reduced down to a curse technique. But while the controversy of Nobara's return is once again something I will wholeheartedly tackle as its own thing in another video, I do just want to talk about 268 because the fandom's kind of been of 2 minds. Half the fandom is like, peak. 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 The other half of the fandom's been like, garbage. Garbage. Trash. And I find myself flipping back and forth, which is crazy. Notably, I do somewhat respect it. There's yet to be a chapter in JJK that's had me, like, flipping back and forth so consistently on how much I think about it. Like, sometimes I read the chapter, I'm like, it's peak. Sometimes I read the chapter, I'm like, it's garbage. And sometimes I read the chapter, it's peak. Like, I literally made a 33-minute live reaction because I was still that confused over, like, my thoughts on it. You can check that over on Patreon for as low as $1 a month. You can remember for as low as $3 a month. Check out the live reaction. It was 33 minutes of me basically arguing with myself. And I'm still not convinced. I'm still going to talk with other people about this because it still bothers me. Mainly because parts of this chapter do feel somewhat appropriately paced. Notably, the conversation between Megumi and Sukuna is, in my opinion, actually pretty fine paced. Mainly because these characters have a dynamic, yet they don't. If you know what I'm talking about, that's the thing with Megumi and Sukuna in particular. Don't get me wrong, Sukuna has had a massive impact on Megumi's life, but it's more so like an impact. Like, say for example, you were walking down the street, and then I appeared out of nowhere, handed you this, and then you grabbed it and hit me in the head with it. Like, yeah, that would be a massive impact on my life. I would likely have some sort of brain damage as I lay on the ground confused on why you hit me with the hammer that I handed you. But at the same time, you would just walk off. And then I'd be there. Confused. So, like, and I'm still conscious after a hammer hit. This thing is pretty heavy. But with that being the case, that's the kind of impact that Megumi had on Sukuna. It's very sudden, it's very rapid, and notably while it is huge, obviously, he was literally Megumi for over a month at this point. Not even over a month, like, actually, I think it is legit just like over a month. Actually, it wasn't that long. But still, a whole month of his life was sacrificed to Sukuna, where he slaughtered his sister. Once again, very big, high-impact stuff. But Megumi was kind of a non-character / contributor for a majority of that. Like, he stopped fighting back after the bath. And the bath happened relatively quickly. It happened the same day he got possessed. So Megumi's kind of just been... And thusly, I'm okay with the fact that the conversation between the vessel and the possessee is really only 2 pages. One of Sukuna arguing, hey, broski, you probably shouldn't be fighting back against me. You're kind of a terrible person. And Megumi being like, oh, you're desperate, for real. And then it ends. And, like, Megumi doesn't even acknowledge Sukuna as a character. And that's fine. Once again, the pacing of that is fine for me, for the most part, because it's like, okay, that's cool. You know, fine. They don't have too deep of a dynamic. Like I said, it's more like y'all randomly ran up to me and went hammer time and beat me over the head. Was it impactful? Yes. Will it haunt me for the rest of my days? Absolutely. Would I talk with you too much about it? Probably not. I'd probably avoid you and keep hammers out of your hands. But for this next part, the stripping of Sukuna from Megumi. Now, part of me is fine with how this is paced, and I think I do kind of prefer it, mainly because I wasn't exactly sure how this would go. Like, notably, if you were to ask me before chapter 268, how would the stripping of Megumi from Sukuna be? I would kind of assume it's something like this, and in fact, I'll give Gege credit. They dramatized it more than I thought. When I thought Megumi was going to be stripped away from Sukuna, I thought it was legit going to be just something like this, where ultimately Sukuna's kind of, or Megumi's kind of punched out of the remains of Sukuna. Like, Sukuna was literally wearing Megumi's body as a flesh suit, and then... But not only did we get that, we had Sukuna wearing Megumi's body as a flesh suit, and then the flesh trying to reach out and consume Megumi as Megumi was knocked away, only to fall apart. So the removal of Sukuna from Megumi, in my opinion, is also pretty fine-paced. Just because, like, once again, the dynamic between the characters isn't what matters too much. The dynamic between Yuji and Sukuna is what matters a lot. And the removal of Sukuna being this entire elongated, crazy process where you see, like, where you essentially, like, reverse a Ben 10 transformation, it probably would have felt weird. Especially considering the incarnation of Sukuna we don't even really see. Like, Megana to Sukuna specifically takes place in a cloud of dust. So we don't actually even see Meguna transform into Sukuna, and if we remember the initial possession, when the pinky was transferred over from Yuji to Megumi, we don't even actually really get to see that transformation. It's just Megumi looks down, and then he looks back up, and then he has the 4 eyes and the markings. So, like, an elaborated or exaggerated transformation of Megumi to Sukuna, or Sukuna to Megumi in this case, not necessarily established in the series as something too complex, so the pacing of that I'm also mostly fine with. In fact, I'll completely lead and rock with that, unlike the initial discussion where I'm feeling a little bit of hesitance with how quickly their dynamic was handled. Yuji and Sukuna. I'll admit, this is where, like, the rushed starts to sit with me a bit, even though I kind of... It's that 50-50 thing, right? Where, like, I understand why Gege did it this way, but it does still feel a little bit weird. This is the conclusion of a battle, specifically between these two, that started all the way back in 238. Now, this is 268. Sukuna's been fighting, specifically with Yuji, for 30 chapters. A hot minute. Of course, it's not 30 consecutive chapters. Of course, Yuji's been in and out of the battle. But still, the battle between these two started then. But if we're being real, the battle between these two started all the way back in chapter 1. When Sukuna first was introduced to Yuji and their dynamic really began. This is something that took years to resolve. Genuine, real-life years. Even in universe, if it's been less than a year, which is still crazy to think about. In universe, it's been less than a year, but us as readers, it's literally been a whole multiple years. 6 years, I believe. So, for the dynamic between our main antagonist and our main character to be wrapped up in 1, 2, 3, 4 pages, and then not even really mentioned for the rest of the chapter, that kind of feels rushed. I'm not gonna lie. Mainly because, and it's the thing, right, where it feels rushed, but I understand it. Because what did we really expect, I guess? Because we had 265. Maybe if 265 didn't exist, then I'd be a little bit more like, these two should have actually talked more and had, like, an active debate. But we already got that in 265. But I'll be honest, the thing that I pictured once Yuji defeated Sukuna was something similar to 265, but different. It's something that someone pointed out, and then I think it was in the spoiler discussion, someone pointed out that the defeat of Sukuna, and specifically how he fades here, reminds them a lot of the Demon King's death in Seven Deadly Sins. Massive spoilers for Seven Deadly Sins, it doesn't really matter. Think of the Demon King, he's the big bad guy, they beat him. Shock horror. But in that series, there's the main character who speaks with the Demon King and in this, like, sort of astral temporal void where both are in forms that kind of represent how they knew each other. And, of course, I was low-key expecting that for Sukuna. Realize almost every single time Sukuna off somebody himself, he did have a genuine conversation with them. With Jogo, well, not Yorozu, but Jogo and Kashimo both had moments where they actually had to talk with Sukuna. It was the entire focal point of the chapter. And I think that's why this feels rushed. Mainly because Kashimo got a whole chapter dedicated to the end of his battle and the conversation with Sukuna that resolved it. And of course, the last page was set up for a cliffhanger, but still, a majority of that chapter was dedicated to that. For Jogo got a fat chunk of a chapter, and I think it kind of ended on him. completely forget the full details of 116. I think it ends with the Uraume cliffhanger off the top of my head. I'm thinking. But still, more time was dedicated to it. That afterlife setup was fine. And honestly, one final, God, it sounds weird to talk about this, but a final epilogue to 268 or 265 wouldn't have hurt. Because notably 265 doesn't end on any sort of resolution. It just ends with both of them stating their ideals. And while, of course, the ending of their ideals is kind of stated here, when Yuji offers Sukuna this chance to live with him and have another chance, and Sukuna's like, I'm not giving you the satisfaction. Doses, bro. Like, that's fine. It works in character. I've come more around to that, though I still need to talk with other people about that. But still, once again, we're talking mostly on pacing, not much character work. So I guess technically we are talking about character work a bit, but I'm trying to like dance between what I want to talk about in the review and what I want to talk about on the pacing front. It still feels rushed. Because I feel like we should have gotten something like that. And honestly, once again, this end is meant to be humiliating for Sukuna, right? Like, it's the one thing the fans have been going back and forth on, especially the heavy Sukuna sloppers, and I get it. I'm something of a Sukuna slopper myself, you know. So I definitely get it, y'all. I own them. But with that being the case, I still feel like the patheticness of Sukuna's death could have been further emphasized if we did have a final conversation that was a genuine conversation between him and Yuji. Note, this conversation ends with Sukuna saying 2 sentences. That's it. It's mostly Yuji talking at him. And even then, it doesn't last that long. It's 2 pages. And it just feels like it's too little for how much we've been building to. And considering we did have all 265, it felt like, and especially not just we had all 265, we've had a pre-established thing where Sukuna can communicate with people in the afterlife, and seeing that scenario reversed, once again going back to an idea I mentioned in the short review, and I'm going to go further in depth in the long review, the whole antithesis to where Sukuna is usually the one guiding those who've lost their lives to him into the afterlife, Yuji being the role and taking upon like his domain symbol as someone who guides people to a proper death. It would have been neat to have these two have one proper internal conversation. And I'm not gonna lie, it low-key feel like Megumi gets that, but even then it's not equal, it's not equivalent to what I would really want. And like I said, it kind of just ends there. We hard cut away to Hakari versus Uraume. So once again, the dynamic that the entire series has been built upon, that we've been fighting for the last 30 chapters for, with Yuji specifically, but realistically, the last story all about, gets wrapped up in 1, 2, 3, 4 pages. I mean, maybe if you want to include the separation part, 5, 6, 7, if you want to include all this and say this is technically it. But I don't know. It feels like too little for how much was dedicated to this. That's the thing. Without Kenny, and without the merger being mentioned, which is something I'll talk about a bit more in the review, this is the plot of JJK. This is its ending. No matter what these next 3 chapters have, unless there's some twist reveal about Sukuna and him somehow still being alive, or some twist reveal about Kenny and him still being alive, some plot twist about the merger and that happening, we get a super dark ending somehow. This is it. That's why I specifically called it the end. Like in the spoiler discussion title, I called it "We're free, we're done, this is the end." And in the live reaction, the thumbnail very specifically says "the end," because these last 3 chapters are just wrap up. The story of JJK ended halfway through the chapter. And that's crazy. I don't know. Is it just me? I kind of wanted more, considering this is what the entire story's been building to. And of course, you could say the entire story built to this point, so it's fine if the point itself is short. I don't know. It's a matter of execution, and the fact that there has already been set up for it, and the fact that we still do have 3 chapters. Now, of course, a lot can happen in 3 chapters. 60 pages is a lot. Who knows? And obviously, we may need a flash forward to the future, because every single manga seems to do that. Like, literally every single manga. I mean, Mahi's isn't too bad. Spoilers for that manga, I guess, but it's been over for a while. But like, I'm trying to think of like all the manga I've read that have ended. They typically do have a flash forward. It varies in length, but like that's the thing. We had 3 chapters left. I feel like this whole chapter could have really been dedicated to the end. You can still have this first section with Megumi and Sukuna. In fact, I still do like this. It once again kind of goes back to the hammer analogy, where it was big, it's bad, it mattered, but it makes sense that it can be wrapped up quickly. But the rest of the chapter really should have been dedicated to this, to the 2 characters who define each other, to the 2 characters who wrote the story of JJK, at least as we know it. Obviously, Kenny's like the main series writer. Like, if we're talking about like an in-universe self-insert for Yeye, like an author equivalent, and would be Big Jaku, Like, he birthed Yuji, and he allowed Sukuna to exist as he did for Yuji. But, like, if we're talking about the main character and the main antagonist, it feels like they should have gotten more than 4 pages to talk. And, like, a proper wrap-up. It feels a little empty. And once again, speaking of pacing, I'm not even going to defend this. This is not something I go back and forth on, or something where I feel slightly off, where I do kind of believe the pacing for this is pretty fast, almost too fast, if not too fast. This one just is. I've heard many things about Hakari vs. Uraume, and once again, why I'm going to tell you, this chapter is super duper controversial, so I do have a bunch of thoughts about this separately that will go into its own video. Long story short, this is rushed. And it's a sign, like, there's been a lot of debate on why Gege suddenly decided to drop, BT does 5 chapters left, we're done. I'm not doing this anymore. Some people are saying it's their hell, some people are saying it's Shonen Jump telling them to wrap it up, sometimes people are saying it's just them, they're just done and they don't want to write it anymore. There are a bunch of different things, but this fight as a whole definitely feels like a byproduct of Gege not even necessarily saying they gave up, they just didn't want to do it. And it's really unfortunate considering Uraume had one of the more unique power sets. And it's a big critique I have for JJK. As much as I love it, a lot of characters can only punch and kick. Punch, kick, and cut. That's about all the characters can do. Very few characters have unique powers like Uraume. The last set of characters who did was the Disaster Curses. And they haven't been around for, once again, over 100 chapters. So, one of the more interesting fights in the series that could have been done with someone who actively uses an element as much as Uraume against a Hakari who had a whole month time skip, to have this fight reduced to nothing. And to have these two characters who were starting to build an interesting dynamic all the way back in 246, I do believe. We got to see what appeared to be the start of their battle. It really is just rushed. There's no real debate about this. Now, there is debate on whether or not rushing it is a good or bad thing. And notably, that's what this whole video is kind of about. I'm just arguing whether or not it's rushed or not rushed. I'll mention in the end whether or not I think rushing is innately bad or rushing is innately good. But if you know anything about me, you'll know that everything in my thoughts about rushing things are somewhat mixed. But with that being the case, this one's definitely rushed, and I'm gonna drop a little hint. I think this is mostly in the bad sense. I think this is a bit of either Gege running out of time, Gege being not feeling like it, or Gege just simply deciding to not explore the full potential of this fight. I'll go more in depth. I've already made a video a long time ago, like 10 months back, talking about why I thought this fight could be so interesting. But now that it's all over, I can definitely tell you, with all the different character powers we've seen and the different types of interactions that could come from this and everything else, yeah, I still have a whole bunch of ideas for this fight that could be neat, but we'll never get it now because Uraume literally lost themselves. So that's pretty rushed. You can very much tell by how it's crammed in too, and how it's sandwiched. It doesn't even get like a full 2 pages all to its own. It gets infused in with this Yuji reaction, and then gets wrapped up here. One of our 4 heavy hitters, realistically one of our 3, because Kenjaku doesn't even acknowledge Yuji as a heavy hitter way back when that statement's first made, and the 3rd main antagonist in Uraume. They may be not that important of characters in the long run, I'll readily admit. And that's why I can understand why people would say the rushed pacing of their fight or the off-screening of it is okay. But at the same time, I'd say both were important enough, and both had enough, and we're starting to go into more, that explained a lot about their past, a lot more about their characters, and genuinely had me intrigued and excited. It's why I wanted Gege to cut to it basically every week. So this, rushed. There's no debate in my mind, but if you're able to change my mind, please do. I like being positive, trust me. For the end of the chapter, and I say the end, really it is the back third, this also feels like a symptom of Gege rushing, which is interesting once again because we have 3 chapters left. The complete skip over of any sort of wrap up that should have been done on the Shinjuku Showdown field, the confirmation of Sukuna's actual defeat, the confirmation of the recovery of Megumi, that whole thing, it didn't have to be much. I'll readily admit that. It didn't have to be. But seeing Todo and Hana get picked up, seeing Uyui teleport to the battlefield and find Yuji holding the remains of Sukuna, seeing all of our characters react to the fact that they just managed to overcome the strongest sorcerer of all time, seeing everybody come and actually have some sort of proper reaction, that would have been better than hard cutting to who knows an indeterminate amount of time later, and our characters kind of just joking back like everything's the status quo when things are fundamentally different. it feels like the plot kind of got lost, and not in the good way. Like, notably, I'm fine with losing the plot somewhat. Like, I lose the plot all the time. Welcome to That Guy with a Pencil. I get on sidetracks and tangents every single bit. But it's like the two halves of the chapter don't even merge. And it feels like, and it's weird to say, but I'm not sure which side was tacked on. I want to say it's the back half, but the back half is arguably more than the entire front half. Because if you break these sections down into the Megumi Sukuna section, the Yuji-Sukuna section, and the Hakari and Uraume section, there are about 2 pages, 4 pages, and then either, I think, 6 pages on the middle end, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages on the back end. But with that being the case, this section is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 ish. I'm sorry, I'm horrible at counting. But still, that's a pretty fat chunk of the chapter. A lot of this was spent on this. And I'm not saying we don't need this, as much as I'm mostly indifferent to the trio dynamic of Megumi, Nobara, and Yuji, mainly because I don't think they got enough time together. I'll readily admit, it would have been nice to have more time with them, but it didn't feel like it was necessary. Specifically because we had so much rapping to do. And this is completely ignoring all the plot points that have kind of just gone unaddressed. Like, okay, I guess we're just done, and no one really cares, but I'm a little confuzzled. I'm a little confused. What's up with the culling games? No one mentions it. Teningen? Megumi? Last we checked, you ate them. Are they still alive? And I guess we don't know. Hey, there's that final finger. Did Yuji eat it or not? Who knows? Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. How long has it been? Who knows? Well, like, that's the thing. We jump so far, or maybe not that far at all, so quickly, and it's so blasé. Don't get me wrong. I get why Gege jumped as hard as they did. Once again, they're trying to end. They're trying to get to the end. It's kind of like how you can tell, especially for any of my sprinters out there, or anyone who plays any sort of intensive sport that goes on for like longer than a burst, or like one, even then, my people who practice sports, like any of my throwers out there, technically your event is like maybe seconds long at most, where you throw something as hard as you can. Or my sprinters out there, you run for maybe, you want to hope, sub 10 seconds, of course. That's barely possible for most humans. But still, your event may last less than half a minute, unless you're going in for the longer distance runs. But like, I feel like everyone, or every athlete, and not even just like a physical sense, but everyone's had that moment where in the last bit of any sort of event you're doing, you're trying to pull out everything you've got and keep every promise you've made and do everything you can, physically, mentally, psychologically, and thusly, you may start to get sloppy. I know at the end of a 400, even back when I was in my prime, I was struggling down those last 50 meters. I didn't have the stamina for that. Even at the end of a 200, I knew I'd stumble and like nearly fall for any event. Heck, knees weak, palms are sweaty, there's vomit on the sweater already, mom spaghetti, I'm nervous. But on the surface, I look calm and ready to drop bombs. But I kept on forgetting the combos I wrote down. The whole crowd, it goes so loud, it opens his wallet, and I have to give it out. Because there have been times, even like video game matches, where it's like, oh no, at the very end, we're running a 1st to 10. We've been fighting for like 3 hours straight for the $20 that we put on it, and my hands are sweaty. The controller's about to slip out of my hand, and I can't do these basic B&Bs to save my life. Trunks, please save me. Because I'm down to my last character out of nowhere after I just got 2-0'd. And now I need to somehow pull this out. I get the feeling that Gege is likely going through. Put a time limit on yourself. You're out of time, and you want to address these things. You want to address Gojo's wrap up with Nobara and Megumi. You want to make sure you keep the promise of Gojo telling Megumi about the loss of Big Doji. Why I say Big Doji? Big Toji. You want to do all that, but is now the time to do that? When you have so much wrap up that needs to be done? And here's the thing, right? The cliffhanger at the end with Yuta, like, oh no, we gotta go save Yuta. But then immediately cutting off with a joke? Like, Yuta, you blah, blah, blah. And then, is that what saving his life sounds like? Yeah, is it funny? Probably to some people, but not me. But it feels so jarring. Like, you could legit tell me, if you were to, like, slap a chapter title and, like, the stuff that goes at the beginning of every chapter right here, and just show me this, I'd 100% believe this is a different chapter. If you told me this back half of the chapter was in the same chapter where Sukuna died, or Uraume died, and we ended the Culling Games off screen, I guess, and Tengen's fine off screen, I guess, and everything else is fine off screen, I guess, and we're gonna save Yuta now, I'd be like, oh, really? But now that I know it, it just feels weird because it's too fast. It's way too fast. I'm not, once again, kind of like the Uraume versus Hakari point, I'm low-key not really gonna try and sugarcoat it. I think it's too quick. I think it's a little bit too speedy, no Gonzalez. And here's the thing, right? The big question. All right, Pencil Man. You think one section, two section, possibly red section, possibly not blue section is all too fast paced. But is it a bad thing? Is the pacing rushed? Is having rushed pacing a bad thing? Not necessarily. In my opinion, the Kashimo fight has very rushed pacing. If you want to call it a fight, it's barely a chapter and a half. Considering Kashimo spends a good chunk of the chapter talking, and the back end of the second half of the chapter is either glazing or talking. But the rush pacing of that fight helps sell the power of Sukuna and the dominance he has over Kashimo. The rushed pacing of Kusakabe versus Sukuna makes sense to show the extreme power and dedication of Sukuna. Like, that's the thing. You can use rush pacing well. You can do it. JJK excels in it, in my opinion. It's one of, I call it this all the time, it's one of the most streamlined shonen manga I've ever read. Where little or unnecessary bits of information or pieces of time are very rarely done. It's why a lot of people in general say this series is rushed. But in my opinion, that's not entirely a bad thing. In my opinion, it's the reason why a lot of people love it and are itching and scratching for it every single week, just like I am and will be for the next 3 chapters, or the last 3 chapters. But ultimately, in this case, I think it is a matter of context. Outside of this first initial part of fast pacing, which makes sense for the general dynamic of Megumi and Sukuna, everything else moves a little bit too fast for how long we've been building to it. And the end of the chapter is kind of just jarring based on, once again, everything we've been building to. And who knows? Maybe my perspective will change once we get these last 3 chapters. That's the thing. I call it the end. I think, narratively speaking, on a macro scale, it is the end, because the big battle is finally done, and I don't see Uraume starting a new fight, or teasing a sequel series at the very, very end. I don't smell this ending up, once again, like 7 Deadly Sins, a reference I made earlier, and I'm scared to make again, because I'm very scared. But I don't see that happening. We're kind of done. It feels like I'm not sure if anything that does happen in these next couple chapters can exactly wholeheartedly redeem this. Will it make it softer, better? Maybe, but I'm sorry, you really can't do another you killed your final villain. You really can't do this heavy hitter just watch their opponent off themselves. You really can't do another first proper reunion between the trio again and make it feel not cramped and rushed or repetitive. You kind of can't. And that's the thing. When it comes to execution and when it comes to pacing, you get one shot. You can't bring Toto back twice. You can't bring Nobara back twice. You can't bring Gojo back twice. Or Buta back in Gojo's body. You can't do that twice. You do it once. And if you try to do it again, I mean, it can work, but it doesn't necessarily hit the same. At least in my opinion. And that's the thing. For what this chapter had to do, it does it. It gets it done satisfactorily. I can understand the information and read the drawings in the text. Yeah. But in terms of what this chapter needed to do on a macro scale, I feel like the execution was poor and very, very rushed in a bad way. I'll talk more about rushing in general in terms of JJK and how I think it is used to the benefit of some aspects of the series, major aspects of the series, some fights in the series, and some character moments in the series, I think are genuinely benefited heavily by the speedy Gonzalez pacing of JJK. But this is one case where I will definitively say, overall, the rushing of the chapter makes it worse. And retroactively undermines a lot of the work the series did. Well, does it ruin the series for me? I've seen some people go as far as to say the pacing of 268 did that. No! I'm still here. I'm going to be here for these last 3. And hey, shock horror, warning, if there's going to be a bunch of retroactive, we're done with them, JJK, far after it's done. Who knows when I'll stop talking about it? Probably for a little bit. I have multiple other obsessions. Have I told you that I read Freyren? I don't think I have. I have like 3 drawings done already. I'm halfway through a same drawing. I'm working through it. So like, trust me, there are other hyperfixations. They're waiting. They're in the back pocket. There aren't enough days in the week, gosh, I want to review more manga. But I'm literally looking at the schedule and I'm like, darn. Like, What do you mean they're only 7 days? And Shonen Jump comes out every Sunday. I can't be reviewing all these and not start overlapping. But still, trust me, there are other things, and JJK does not retroactively get ruined. It just feels a bit undermined. That's my thoughts, though. What do you guys think? Do you guys think this is rushed? Do you think the chapter's rushed? Do you agree with my parts of the chapter that are rushed, or do you disagree? Do you think the chapter's paced fine? Let me know. Let me know down below. And if you made it all the way to the end of this video, please do me a favor and leave. No, we'll do it. Leave Speedy Gonzalez. If you don't know who Speedy Gonzalez is, literally type it in. Speedy? I'm not exactly sure how to spell Gonzalez. Wait a second. Leave Speedy Gonzalez in the comment section down below. I believe it's just Speedy. Yeah, Speedy Gonzalez. Gonzales. I wasn't sure if there was an accent or an N on anything. But leave Speedy Gonzalez in the comment section down below. I thank you so much for watching. Please remember to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. And make sure you hit that little notification bell so you don't miss out on every second of the channel. Also, I do happen to have a Patreon down below. You can support me for as low as $1 month. Things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. You also now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Those perks include the 33-minute live reaction to this very chapter, ad-free variations of all my videos, and if you become a $25 patron or a $25 member, you can order whatever video you want. Also, I do have a link to my Ko-Fi in the description down below, where you can drop 5 beans for a short video, 25 beans for a long video, or any beans at all. Any support is always greatly appreciated. Now, I'd like to thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is that guy with the pencil, writing off. I'd like to give a thank you to our $3 members: Sarah, Greyhound, Eternal Flame, NMA, Real Rare, Red Wolf 4765, Paris Arnold, Astro, Brandon Payne, and G Prosper. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $5 patrons: Sean, Midnight Lord 21, Kevin, Encarnacion, Josh Brown, Igneal Lind, and A+A. And I'd like to give a big ol' thank you to our $7 members: Autumn Mornings Lazo, Fine, Zombie Hunter, and Austin Wimberly. Then I'd like to give a thank you to our $10 members: Robbie Uchiha, Jay Warrior, and AZ Void. Then I'd like to give a big ol' thank you to our $10 patrons: Overlord Zero, Joaquin Munoz, and Idem Okami.
And I'd like to give the craziest, juiciest, most next-level, quadruple, sloppy, toppy, next-level superhuman in beyond this world kidney having thank you to our $100 patron, or that guy with a pencil tier patron, Calvin Elder.